Geneva, Switzerland, this location means the same for all the fans, the brain of their favorite annual music competitions, the member of Eurovision family. This time we are here at the headquarters of the European Broadcasting Union, and we have the chance to make an exclusive interview with the EBU head of live events and the reigning executive supervisor of Eurovision family programs, Jon Ola Sand. Welcome, and we would like to say much thanks for organizing this interview.
Thank you.
To be the leader of such amazing programs and television shows could be a very hard thing. What makes you to apply for this position many years ago?
Well, I have had a relationship with the Eurovision Song Contest, so to say, since 1998, when I first joined the contest in Birmingham as head of delegation for the Norwegian act that performed that year. And since that, I've had several different positions within the national selection shows in Norway, both as head of delegation to Eurovision Song Contest, but I also commissioned the show. I have been working with the team as an editor-in-chief. And when Alexander Rybak won the contest in Moscow in 2009, I was there. And I knew that this was going to hit NRK quite hard, because it's a very complex challenge, and the event in Moscow was huge and was a great show, and I was appointed to be the producer in Oslo, to be the executive producer, to produce Eurovision Song Contest for all the members on behalf of the EBU at that time. Right after that, Svante Stokselius, my predecessor, decided to leave the EBU. And I was asked if I was interested to join, and in the first place I was not, because there are things moving to Geneva, because you have to live and work in Geneva, and at that time I didn't see that as a good fit for my personal life and for what I was doing. I had a very interesting job at NRK, the public service broadcaster in Oslo, but I had several meetings with the EBU, and late autumn I decided that I should give it a try. So I came down here in 3rd of January 2011 to Geneva, and I started working for the EBU, and I've been here for a very long period already. So Rotterdam will be my 10th Eurovision Song Contest, and of course it is a fantastic opportunity to have that chance to be a part of such an amazing show like the Eurovision Song Contest. So it's been very good years here.
It sounds great. You said that this will be the 10th Eurovision Song Contest in Rotterdam in the Netherlands. How has been Eurovision Song Contest changed in the past decade from your point of view?
Well, Eurovision Song Contest has developed ever since it was launched in 1956. And the main big changes came when more countries had the possibilities to actually come on board Eurovision Song Contest. So in the early 2000s, when a lot of the former Eastern Bloc wanted to join Eurovision Song Contest, it had to expand. So in 2004 we started with the first semi-final, and already at that time we could see a real shift in the energy of Eurovision Song Contest, because the countries that came on board, they came with much more energy, they were much better prepared, they had much better acts at that time. So Eurovision Song Contest before 2004 was more getting into, in my opinion, to a more sort of slumbering mode, where it was a yearly event, but it hardly had that energy and push that came later on when new countries came on board. Then in 2008 with 2 semi-finals. And after we hosted Eurovision Song Contest in 2010, and I started here, my main focus and the focus of the team here and at EBU is to strengthen the public service values in Eurovision Song Contest, give it a meaning. Why do we do it? Why do we have this fantastic event every year? And how can we showcase what public service can do if they flex their muscles together? So that's been my main focus.
What has been the biggest challenge in your job during the last 9-10 years?
I cannot point out any specific challenge. I mean, it's always a challenge because it is a very, very complex operation. It is much more than our members usually do. They know how to produce TV because they do it, but there is so much more with Eurovision Song Contest. You have all the event side around it, staging a press center with 1,500 journalists. You have to have very complex transport logistic in place. Yes. And all of this is something that they usually don't do. So there's always a challenge to move Eurovision Song Contest around Europe, and I cannot point out any specific challenge.
During the years, EBU has changed the structure of Eurovision Song Contest shows and the voting procedure, the announcement ways that makes all the shows more and more interesting and exciting. Did you find the most sustainable system for the show in the latest modification in 2019? With the announcement of the results and other stuff with like that.
Yeah, I mean, we always look at how we can build excitement, and I think that what we did in 2016 when we changed the presentation of the voting, we managed to create a much more exciting ending of the show. The end of show, Eurovision Song Contest, became much more exciting. Before that, you had the tour of the spokespersons, and quite early in that round, you could predict who would win. You could see a very sort of clear pattern. By changing the presentation, it became much more exciting. And then we saw that by tweaking that a little bit, like we did last year, we could even make it clearer and more exciting. So that was I think a good step to do. There are no other big plans to change parts of the Eurovision Song Contest, but we always look at how we can make it better and make it fit better for the schedules. Because the TV environment changes, the media environment changes, people's habits changes. So I think it's good that we also are open to change.
As we noticed earlier, we asked and request more fans and others questions. So this will be the first. Are you planning to use any show elements for saying goodbye? Maybe a few minutes interval song about your 10 years in the bubble, like Love, Love, Peace, Peace. This is from Hungary, the leader of the Hungarian Fan Association.
Well, then I have to disappoint you. There are no such plans ready. I will try not to do much around my departure. I think I'm here to do a professional job, and hence I'm not an artist. I'm not very good at performing, so I would prefer not to, and I have no plans, at least for myself.
But there are harder questions. Although ESC has always stressed that it does not want to give way to daily politics, but it has inadvertently appeared on the program occasionally through the reaction of the performers or the audience. There are countries where the Eurovision Song Contest was even the topic of debate in the national parliament. How do you see how such a program can pull itself out of politics? Does it have to eliminate itself at all?
I mean, such a big focus project like Eurovision Song Contest could always be an attention point for politics, and we see that every year. Actually, that's it could be from specific groups or specific NGOs that wants to use it. It could be from politicians that would like to have a say in it. We have been very clear all the time that we cannot allow any political message in the shows, because that's what we control, and not on the premises of Eurovision Song Contest. And we managed to steer that quite well, I must say, over the years. We had an incident last year with the Icelandic Act. We have had such incidents before. In Stockholm we had an incident, but I think we managed to steer that very well. If people around would like to use Eurovision Song Contest for political reasons, there's very little we can do. If a politician in a country would like to make a political statement about the Eurovision Song Contest, it's not in my power to deny that or stop that. But within the premises of Eurovision Song Contest and within the programs, we have managed very well to keep it free of politics.
Was there a year when Eurovision was on the verge of disruption, cancellation due to some reasons?
No, not really. There have been years that have been tougher in the sense that it's a very complex production, but we have never ever had a sort of a cancellation threat or anything close to that. I've been convinced every year that we can make Eurovision Song Contest happen in any territory, and I still firmly believe that is possible. But I mean, we have very high security level. We follow the local situation very. We scrutinize that very thoroughly. So we have to make sure that we can do it safe, that we can do it in the best possible way. I mean, invite a lot of people there. So we always follow that very closely. But no, in my time, there's not been any such things.
Another question from our partner program. This was asked by Roxana Majewska for Destination Eurovision Poland. What do you think about the orchestra on Eurovision Song Contest? Is there a change to get it back to the contest? If yes, in which way, and how do you imagine it?
I was a part of that discussion. I remember when the orchestra disappeared from Eurovision Song Contest, because I was the head of delegation in Birmingham. The last year they had an orchestra in '98. The reason why there is no longer an orchestra is that actually that decision allowed Eurovision Song Contest to grow. It is, as I've said many times in this interview, it's a very complex and complicated project. Adding an orchestra into that to more than 40 acts would be an impossible challenge. It wouldn't be possible to travel around. Many of our broadcasters doesn't have an orchestra, so we have to bring an orchestra. The rehearsal time would have been expanded a lot. It will be extremely expensive. So there is no discussion about bringing the orchestra back at the time being. Although I could see that it would be wonderful to have a full orchestra there, but it's absolutely impossible. Then we have to scale it down again and to make a different Eurovision Song Contest.
Yes, it's well known. ESC is the showcase of technical innovations of television. Which innovations are you the proudest?
I'm the proudest every year when I see the high-end production that our members deliver. There is no sort of single moment I can say that specifically proud or more proud than other times. It's just a fantastic production every year, using the the latest technology in lighting, in LED, in cameras, special cameras, all of it. Now we have had the augmented reality brought into the show. We will see more of that in the next edition. So there are always developments, and that is what I'm proud of.
For you, what was the most remarkable show element in the past 10 years?
Again, I have no specific remarkable element. I think there's a lot of remarkable moments during the last 10 years, and again, I'm very proud of some of the brave decision that the broadcasters take, because they can put on really complicated acts that might not seem very complicated, but on top of the competition where you have up to 40 and more countries broadcasters participating, you put on extremely complicated opening, interval acts, VTs, postcards, all of it, and it's a lot to be proud of when you see that.
Mm-hmm. The ESC has expanded over the decades. It followed by Eurovision Young Musicians, Eurovision Young Dancers, Junior Eurovision Song Contest, and finally, in the past years, Eurovision Choir. Do you have any ideas you would like to realize? Other things?
Well, it's not really up to me to realize that all this initiative comes from the members to the EBU. And the EBU is not sort of a production unit where you start. We facilitate when there is a wish among the broadcasters or a need among the broadcasters to put on any specific program or project. We can help them facilitate that and to bring more members in. But there is no discussion around my table to invent new formats. Mm-hmm. And all the formats you mentioned here has been created by the members, and the EBU has been a facilitator for it.
Mm-hmm. This year's Eurovision Young Dancers has been cancelled for not the first time. What depends on the number of the participating broadcasters, and why does not EBU responsible to delegate the broadcasters to take part in competitions?
I mean, we encourage broadcasters to take part, and we work with our member groups. We have a music and dance bureau with all the music and dance experts among our members who meet several times a year. and we discuss a lot with them. If the interest is not there to participate, because they see different priorities on their schedules, then there is nothing we can do. We cannot force people to or broadcasters to join these events. You see that more and more broadcasters are under financial pressure, and they also have their own cultural channels with smaller budgets. So spending a project like Eurovision Young Dancers is quite an expensive project, and to spend money from the broadcasters on that project can be difficult when you have to maintain cultural channels with less budgets than primetime channels.
Let's move a little bit farther, both sides and both directions. What are the obstacles to launch Eurovision Asia? How is the project going? When will be the first contest could be held?
To your latter answer, we don't know. It's been a very complicated ride, and one of the reasons for that is that the TV market in Asia is very different from Europe. It's much more diverse. You don't have a central organization like the EBU, who have a very close relationship with all their members. You have ABU, the Asian Broadcasting Union, but it works in a different way with its members. So it is a very, very different setup. And Eurovision Song Contest came about very many years ago in a totally different time, and it has developed over time. To launch that initiative now into a very diverse market like the Asian market is complicated. We have a very good partner in SBS Australia. We've been working a lot together with EBU to get it up, but in the end it is something that the broadcasters they have to commit to participate. They have to see the value for their schedule, and so far we haven't managed to pull together enough broadcasters actually in Asia. We're not giving up, and we have good progression, but things take time. Basically.
Yes. And let's move to the other side, another direction, to America. With Netflix planning to host an ESC-style American contest, do you foresee an American wildcard entry like Australia had into the contest, or even a cross-Atlantic contest happening?
First of all, it's not right that Netflix is planning this. We have an initiative with a group of producers who are talking to a lot of players in the American market to get a similar contest up between the states in the US, but that's nothing to do with Netflix. I mean, they talk to Netflix, they talk to other big players, so both the digital or the more terrestrial usual broadcasters there. So let's see. US is also a very difficult market, so this is also something that we try, and we will see if it works. There is no initiative plan to invite a US broadcaster to join Eurovision Song Contest. That has not been in a discussion. If this initiative succeeds, which we really hope, then we might start that discussion, but for the time being there's no discussion about it. And the reason for that is that it's not a well-known project in the US. So if we should bring a country on board Eurovision Song Contest, they have to have a domestic audience. They have to have enthusiasm. They have to have the structure in place that can really embrace Eurovision Song Contest, like Australia. Because they had broadcasted it for more than 30 years. It was a huge fan base there. They had commentators in place for many years, so it was a natural fit. That's not the case with the US.
So you are working on this format in Sweden now, because there are some news about this kind of preparations.
This is not a Swedish company. It's a US company, but there are some Swedes involved in the initiative. Okay. Yes, so they are forming their own company. It's based in Los Angeles, and the work it goes out from Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. And the final three questions. You have probably become one of the most popular competition directors in the history. The fans said this of Eurovision Song Contest in the recent years, and not just with your so-called quirk. Where this most anticipated phrase "take it away" come from?
Well, it's not really easy to see where it comes from, but I think it was a good way of handing over actually the tasks back to the hosts and back to the spokespersons. So I thought it was a good phrase, and I see that it sticks. So that's good.
Really love it, yes. And what's next? This is as we started the introduction, this will be the last Eurovision Song Contest in your career. In what area will you continue to work?
I will continue to work for public service broadcasting. So I will work for NRK, the Norwegian Public Service Broadcasting. They are moving their whole headquarters from Oslo. Not from Oslo, they're moving their headquarters. So they will build a brand new media building somewhere in Oslo, and I will take the lead in that process to make sure that they get facilities right for the next 40 years. So it's a very, very exciting and big project, moving 3,000 people to brand new offices, and that's something different, and I think it's time to move on to do something different. I could very well have stayed here for more years, but I think that was a challenge that only happens once, and I want to be a part of it.
Yes. Everyone wants to know more about your successor. Can we know something about him or her, or what advice would you give for your successor?
I cannot say anything about my successor, but I think it's important that someone who takes on this position understands that this is a part of a broader setup. There's a lot of stakeholders involved. This is not a one-man show or a one-woman show at all. And people give me too much credit and too much power for the work I do, because we work very closely with all the members. We work closely with all the delegation. There's a great team here at EBU with a lot of knowledge. We have external partners, both in Germany, in Denmark, in Switzerland. It's a teamwork, a broad teamwork. And for that, my successor will know this and understand it, of course, because we have very carefully selected someone to take on this position, to make sure that that person has a lot of knowledge about both the song contest, but also how you lead a big team, how you work in different cultures, how you work with different type of broadcaster with different level of knowledge, and all of that. We will go very professional when it comes to the selection process.
Much thanks for your time and for the chance to make this interview.
Thank you.